This record is for anybody thinking about giving up on life.
Maybe we can try again.
For anybody going through a dark time, suffering, feeling all alone, this is for you.
Suicide occurs across all ethnic, economic, social, and age boundaries. In 2002, suicide was the 11th leading cause of death in the U.S., claiming over 31,000 lives. Suicide rates among youth, ages 15 to 24, have increased more than 200% in the last 50 years. That's 86 suicides per day, one suicide every 17 minutes.
Another godforsaken day.
My name is Natalie Sojka. I am 32 years old and I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Let's see. So I was either 12 or 13 the first time I tried to commit suicide. And I was at my dad's apartment in Kenmore, New York. I think I'd probably been thinking about just sort of ending my life for a while. And I took everything in the medicine cabinet that I could get my hands on. So I don't know, there's probably like Robitussin and I don't know, all this stuff that you had in your medicine cabinet growing up. So I like just took everything I could get my hands on, and then I like fell asleep, and then a couple hours later a friend of mine that was a good friend of mine at the time came over and was knocking on the door, and kind of woke up, and that was it. Felt kind of weird for the next couple days, but not, never had to go to the hospital or anything to get my stomach pumped or anything like that. So that was the first time. Neither of my parents knew that I tried to commit suicide, which is interesting because I realized that even then it was like I think I was afraid of like getting in trouble or something. Like I didn't want them to know, which is so strange to me now. Growing up, my relationship with my mom was pretty bad. She would, I don't know, what I would call abusive, used to hit my brother and I a lot. So I think, it was horrible actually. It was a really bad relationship for me. I didn't feel supported by my mom or loved, or that anything I did was ever enough for her. And I think the abuse was really hard. It was just hard. I realized it affected a lot of things for me growing up. And yeah, it was it was just really hard. I felt really unaccepted. It's like whatever style I had going on then, which was of course super rebellious, black long hair and shaved head, and I was going to extremes and always getting in trouble for that. And I don't know, I think that the hardest part about it was that I felt like I was a good kid. I did well in school and I didn't really get in trouble, didn't get caught skipping school, or I was polite. My friends' moms liked me. I felt like I was a good kid, and yet somehow I always found myself in trouble. So I'd say she was also very strict. And then my relationship with my dad was good. I really loved my dad. Going to see him every other weekend after my parents got divorced was my sanctuary, my safe place, because I felt very accepted by him and I felt listened to. And so my dad was sort of the safe parent. And of course now, I also realize now that I'm older that, there were certainly some interesting things about my dad. And him just sort of not wanting to see certain things going on, as a kid, that I never really got until now. I started to confront my parents about, well, Mom, why, tried to talk to her about hitting us as kids, and She says she doesn't remember that ever happening, which is really amazing because my brother and I have like talked about it multiple times and just like the impact that it's had on us. And then talking to my dad about it as well, he's like, what? Like, I didn't know that was going on. And, you know, I guess from being an adult now, you kind of like, how can you not know that something like that isn't going on, or, you know, are you just choosing not to see it, which I think was more the case for my dad. It was weird. I was thinking about this the other day. It's just like, because it's like amazing to think about, like, getting to a place where, you know, you feel like that's the only option. Yeah. But it's, you know, it's like I remember thinking a lot about it, you know, like really going through like all my options, and it was just like, wow, man, like, you know, I think at that point I knew that I was going to have to live with my mom till I was like 16, till I could make my own, because that legally, from what I understood, at least at that point, you couldn't decide what parent to live with until you were 16. And I don't know, I just didn't think that I was just like, I felt so depressed, like so dark. It's even like with my friends, you know, like I remember having friends like in grade school and high school, and I was always like, how are they so like, I don't know, I guess I kind of always had this heaviness about me as well, like, you know, it's like my friends would be talking about like boyfriends and sneaking out of the house, and I would be like, contemplating like world issues or something, you know, like it was always like, I was always like worried or thinking about stuff that felt like far beyond me, you know. It was like always this experience of like being so different and so consumed by things that nobody else in my grade or like around me seemed to be concerned with. Like it felt hard to talk to anybody about it. I didn't really connect with a lot of people, so that I don't know, man. I feel like that probably tied into it a lot. I felt like I had no, like, it was like a numbness that happened. Like a total numbness. Like there was no joy, and there was no like super, there's no joy, and there's no like immense pain. It was just like a numbing that happened. I went to a Catholic school, so it was the whole thing like, oh, if you commit suicide, like you go to hell, or, you know, I like contemplated all of that stuff, like just like, really, like, am I really gonna go to hell? Like, am I gonna, you know, like, am I gonna set myself behind in life, or in many lives, or whatever we have, if I take my life in this one? And I just continue to come back to like not caring. It's funny because like what's coming up for me now is like, wow, it's a lot. Like, what if my mom watches this video? You know, like that's a lot for like a person to hear. But yeah, I think, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's a combination of other things too. You know, like not fitting, like not feeling like I fit in school, or like. But yeah, I feel like a lot of it had to do with my relationship with her. Yeah.
How old were you whenever you attempted the second time?
I was 13.
So it was just 1 year?
Yeah. It was a rough point in my life. Yeah, 13. Yeah, and that, I got more creative with that time. My mom went on a golfing trip with her friend for the day, and I rigged a garden hose from the exhaust pipe of her car in the garage into the back seat, and sort of like filled in the crack in the door with towels so that like it would keep all the exhaust in, and then just laid there for a while, listening. Always music involved in these processes, but listening to Jesus and Mary Jane, remember that? And yeah, just yeah, just laid there. I don't know for how long either. It was a really, really hard period of life for me. I think definitely one I've avoided going back to that whole like experience of until like recently. Because it's kind of scary to, I just afraid it's like a super dark place to go back to. But I eventually got to a place where I realized like if something didn't shift that I was fucked. I was just like, I don't know, man, something had, like, it just felt like something had to shift. And it did. But not till 15. I was trying to remember if I left like a note or something, or a letter. I don't think I did. I think I remember writing something in my journal. That was it. Like, there's no notes to anybody because I was so fucking depressed and just like miserable like every day. I ended up like I had a friend of mine who I don't know. I was like, "What are you doing tonight?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm going to some introduction," and it ended up like I basically went to an introduction to the Landmark Forum, which is, you know, at that point in time, it was, I don't know, it was actually pretty cool. It was one of my first experiences with feeling like listened to as a teenager, or like as a kid. Like where someone was actually listening to what I was saying and like recreating like my experience. And there's something about that like had me really interested in like wanting to like participate in like whatever this, you know, this weekend was. That shifted my reality completely and really like brought me out of like all of the depression and the feeling of like being trapped, and kind of gave me a different perspective of like what was going on for my mom. And just to get like when my mom would like say something like that was her perspective, and like I could have my own, and like it did like kind of empowered me as a kid, and I felt more empowered and less hopeless and helpless, and you know, in fear of, you know, getting in trouble or getting hit or whatever it was. The interesting part of that is like I just realized, you know, in the last couple of weeks that essentially what I've done since then though is just kind of avoided ever feeling the same feelings that I had back then, which also like I don't feel like that's necessarily a good thing. I think basically by like avoiding anything that would have me experience a feeling of helplessness or hopelessness or not feeling safe or unworthy or not enough. Like whenever I would find myself in those situations, I would either like quit the job, break up with the person, not be friends with that person, not take on a project. It was like I would just avoid anything that could possibly put me in a space like that, which is pretty much like most anything that I'm going to do in my life. So I feel like I just kind of avoided that, any of those things altogether until, you know, until recently, where, you know, I kind of allowed started feeling similar experiences of like numbness, like not being able to feel really joyful or like a lot of pain, just sort of feeling this like feeling in the middle. But realize, because I think like there's a part of me that really felt like if I went back to that place, like I would die, you know? So it was like completely avoiding it altogether, and then, you know, revisiting similar like feelings and emotions. I was like, oh, like I'm not in the same place that I was before. I am like, you know, I'm not a 12-year-old little kid that can't do anything about where she's at or like who she's surrounded with or what she's saying to people. It's like I actually do have some control over like what happens, and Yeah, and I don't, it's like, I keep telling myself I don't have to go back to my mom's house, I'm not just at my dad's for the weekend, like I know it's just like breaking old patterns, I guess. And now that I'm realizing I don't have to be afraid of it, because my situation's different. I actually do have supportive people around me now, and it's like I'm not trapped in the same situation that I was in. So I feel like because I get to recognize that I'm not in the same situation I was at like 12 or 13. It's not as scary to be depressed to me anymore. I don't like it. It doesn't feel good to me, but it probably doesn't feel good because I have it connected to all these horrible things that happened as a kid. But I think depression is like a natural emotion that probably everybody experiences at one point or another. But I guess more so than more certain people than other people. Because so much of like my old, the stuff that used to go through my head or get said to me as a kid comes up, like my mom used to say a lot of hurtful things to me as well, like call me a brat or a slut or, call me ungrateful or, I don't know, it's like all these like little comments that I think I heard as a kid that then become my voice and like what I'm saying to myself. So, I guess by facing like that depression and like allowing that to really like for me to go through it as opposed to avoid it, it was hard because I was hearing all the same like comments that were made to me as a kid, and that has now become like my subconscious voice of like, you're not doing it right, or you're doing something wrong, or you don't matter, or it's like all these different thoughts. But again, I feel like in realizing like, oh, like I'm not gonna die, like I have people that love me, it's not, it's just realizing that like that space that I was in at 12 or 13 is not the space I'm in now. I've never actually thought about committing suicide after 15, ever. If it's like if you're a younger person or a teenager, like, and you feel alone in whatever town or city you're in, I just want people to know that like there's other people like me out there that are experiencing similar feelings and going through similar things. Like you're not alone. You're not the only person in your town that's like going through this. And I think that I think that a lot of people do deal with thoughts of suicide and do get depressed, but they're not as brave as those that kind of express that or are okay talking about it. So I guess what I want them to take away is that they're not alone, and then also that there's like other answers to being grateful for life and really enjoying it than ending it. Like there's so many different things out there. Like suicide is not the answer. And I do believe that we all have a gift to give and to bring here. And I think a lot of times it's why like some of us experience such intense like childhoods or intense situations in life. Is like a lot of time that's part of understanding what that gift is. And nobody else has the gift that you do. So it's feels important for us to all play our part here. God, what would I tell my 12 or 13-year-old self? I guess a couple things that I guess just I would tell her that like the way that things were for, how would I address this? The way the way that things are not how they're gonna stay, and things are always changing. Yeah, and then she's doing a really good job of navigating through the path that she was given in life, and to just stay on it and stay strong and continue to love herself, because that's all that matters. For me right now, like my practice of meditation for an hour in the morning, sometimes an hour at night, just really has me tune into like my own energy and that love for myself, and the understanding of what it feels like to be to be connected to the source of who I am, and grounded in that, which I think is really difficult right now for a lot of people, because we're so wrapped up in our jobs and our bills and our houses and our kids and our vacations and, you know, like all this. We're so distracted by all this different stuff that it's like taken us away from really knowing who we are, and, you know, thinking for ourselves and really appreciating ourselves. And like, it's like we're forgetting to do the most important thing that there is to do, which is really, you know, cultivate and understand our relationship to ourselves. It's like the last thing that people do, you know. So I think especially, I feel like especially for women, because we tend to, you know, take care of other people and focus on our friends or our families or our coworkers or whatever, and we, you know, it's like the most important relationship gets left behind. So I think that's how I've been able to really tap into loving myself so much more deeper than I ever have, is just through meditation, through, you know, having time with myself without anyone else around, you know, not having to like take care of anyone or please anyone or, you know, decide anything. It's just like stillness, and that's where I found that. If we're loved from an early age and like really given the opportunity to be ourselves and to think for ourselves, I think the world would be a lot different place. I would say, like, if there's anything a parent can do, if they are willing to look at that, is just listen, like, you know, without judgment, without evaluation, without, you know, listening from not how you're gonna, like, how they're gonna answer back, or like, you know, what their thought is, or, you know, how they feel about it. It's like none of that is listening to anyone. Like, listening is really just hearing what someone's saying and being present for it without all of that other stuff happening at the same time, you know.
Depressed, can't even sleep state. You ask yourself every day, how much more can I take? Your whole life is in pieces, how much more can it break? The frustration, anguish, and tears makes it painfully clear that you don't want to stay here on the brink of despair with them voices in your ear. Before you take another step, I got a message you should hear. Listen, put the gun down, drop the razor blade, throw the pills away, stick around another day. I know it's hard to do it, stress and the pressure brewing, we all going through it.